Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Podcast. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is Sean Alexander, who is founder and president of Kailani. Thanks for joining us today, Sean.
Thank you, Mario. Great to be here.
Well, let's start by just having you explain what is Kailani and what do you do?
Well, Kailani is Canada's fastest growing outdoor lifestyle brand. We started incorporated at the end of 2019, very end of 2019, and was really just a small garage business that I had on the side, selling products, specifically paddle boards, out of my garage to my friends and neighbors in the new lake community. And eventually we grew it now to 3 years, 3 years last month. And we've gotten into over 100 SKUs related to obviously inflatable paddle boards, hard boards, rotomolded hard coolers, insulated drinkware, and just kind of everything that people use on a daily basis, but with a little bit of a Hawaiian flair.
Okay, then. And so where are you sold?
So right now we're in well over 200 retailers across the country. We sell online e-commerce, and we also are on Amazon. So those are kind of our three target points. And then we're sold to the business community in the corporate branded apparel market. So we've partnered with a lot of promotional companies across the country in every province, and they then sell our product branded with various companies' logos on them.
So tell me just a little bit about the genesis of this. How did this all come about?
Well, as I had mentioned, this was really just something on the side for me. I moved into a lake community, built a home, had my family there, and I was looking to just make a little extra money on the side of my oil and gas career. I was downtown Calgary for 15 years in the oil and gas sector.
Yeah.
And this was just a side gig, something fun. I created a name, being Kailani, it means sea and sky, and I was importing paddle boards from overseas to certain specifications that I had put forth, and found a great factory to work with, was importing these products and then selling to my neighbors. And at the end of the day, I realized that I'm not going to get rich selling paddle boards, because not everybody wants to be on the water. And what other products could we come up with that the consumer would see value in, especially if we were 25 to 30% less than the retail price point of the big brand out there that we all are familiar with, or the multiple big brands. And so that's really our strategy is better pricing for the consumer. And on the retail side, we still have great retail partners where they make great margins. So we try to handle everything from cradle to grave here. We do everything from the design, importing, warehousing, distribution, all out of Calgary.
So, which is kind of bizarre, right? When you think about it, right? Calgary is not known to be like a water resort type area. And can you talk a little bit about that, of how a business can do so well in Calgary despite our lack of water, I guess?
Well, I think the Albertan and the discretionary spending that happens here, everybody's a lot of people are very outdoorsy. So we've got, we're nestled up to the Rocky Mountains, as you're aware. You live here, and we like being outdoors, family and friends, and we have discretionary spending that can afford some of the luxury lifestyle products. And so geographically, we're definitely not the center of Canada. So from a shipping point of view, it takes a little bit more to get it out east. But we're represented in really every province and selling online. I think we've got a great story of affordability for consumers.
Yeah. Now, you're in many ways, you're kind of like the prototype of the story of the oil and gas worker laid off becomes success as an entrepreneur, right? We hear that story quite often. Why do you think some of you guys in the oil patch that move on become successful as entrepreneurs?
I think, I'll attribute this back to actually the last oil and gas company I worked for. They had put their entire business development team around the world through some very, very solid business planning, because as salespeople and business development managers related to products and services that we would sell to the oil companies to drill a particular well, for instance, we've got to understand, the business side of how much inventory they have to buy, how much do they have to warehouse, how quickly is the cash cycle. So these oil companies sometimes put their salespeople through these schools, these intense courses, which are really like 1 week fast track MBAs on how to understand the business and put a business case together on how can we make in the oil patch. And I just took all of those learnings and applied them to something fun that I was selling out of my garage. And it happened to be very soon after I actually was put through some of that training. And then I was laid off. And I thought, you know what, I can take everything they gave me in the oil patch and apply it to this and be successful in it if I dot the I's and cross the T's. And that's really what I did. So thank you to the oil and gas company that laid me off in January of 2020, because you really made, you were part of that whole equation of how I was able to launch this quickly.
You know what is funny? Your story resonates with me because I was similar, right? Not in the oil patch, though. I was a journalist laid off from the Calgary Herald for after many, many years, and on my own now. But when I look back, I think the same way as you did. If I didn't have that experience before me to lay the foundation, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? So I guess it's a mindset, right? When you look forward as a business owner, like you've got to have the right mindset and positive attitude to move on from the past, I guess.
Yeah, well, just like yourself, Mario, you'd been in media for 40 plus years. You've been professional in the industry, and from my understanding, I've read a lot of your articles, and you learn a lot from probably all the people that you interview, and you take everything. It's somewhat like I always attribute it. It's like an actor. Like an actor, they play so many roles and they research so many roles that they become very intelligent in ways that only experience gets you. And so I mean, I always tell people, if you want to be an entrepreneur, try to be solving a problem. Solve someone else's problem with a product, for instance, and then that's half the battle. If you're solving a real problem, but I also tell anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur, the best thing you can do is try to do everything in life that you possibly can. I've had a lot of jobs in my life and learned a lot from every single job, career, position that I've ever had, and taken the best of those things and applied them to the next job. Yeah. And I think that's founded.
So, Sean, you in I think it was November appeared on Dragon's Den and were successful there. Tell us a little bit about what happened and the outcome from that experience.
Great trip. Obviously, if you watched the episode, I got a little teary-eyed. It was a great experience. It was actually my second trip to Toronto for filming of Dragon's Den. I was on the show in season 2 and wasn't successful in getting an investment from the Dragons, and I came back to the oil patch and went back to work and started focusing on that career. But going on the Dragon's Den with Kailani was first off, making it through 2,500 to 3,000 people who audition across the country is a feat in itself.
Yeah.
150 people or so get sent to Ontario for taping, but only about 120, from my understanding, what the producer said, actually make it on the air. So you've got to make it through all of these checks and balances. It's got to be good TV. At the end of the day, it's all about good TV first, and the Dragons are there to find opportunities, right, with their own working capital. Yeah. And so we were successful in landing Mr. Wes Hall on the show with a deal where he had offered us $500,000 for 15% equity in our company, as well as a further operating line to grow our inventory in the US and Canada of a total of another 500. So you could kind of say it's $1 million deal. Very pleased with how things went. You get picked apart on there, so you got to be willing to. It can be, you might be on camera taping for probably an hour or so or more, and they grill you. You got to come in with your numbers. You got to have a good valuation. Sometimes it's better to be conservative on the valuation. And if you have your numbers and you've got revenue is the key, I always say, is if you've got revenue, not just an idea, but you've got revenue and you start to show how you execute it, it's really up to them to decide if you're worth betting on. Because that's what it's about. They're betting on you as much as they are on the product.
Yeah, exactly. What were you a little nervous going on?
I wasn't nervous. I would say I tell my wife that I don't like writing down things on notes, and I needed to have everything in my head, because if you don't know your numbers, they're going to catch you. And so
Yeah.
you got to know your product and your strategy and the plan, and tell them your story. And so it was stressful, probably more stressful than most, because I was there for the second time, and this time I needed to come away with a win. And my son was there. As parents, we all want to give our kids someone to look up to. So he was in the background watching, so that was emotional for me, because I knew he was back there. He's 11 years old now. And to be honest, I just felt honored to be there, but it was overwhelming, because I at Christmas time broke my neck in Mexico.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I could have been, I was in the hospital when I got back. We had to take a fairly quick emergency flight home. And I could have been in a wheelchair, sitting there in front of them. So I I thank my lucky stars that I was standing. I have recovered, but very could have been very tragic. So all of those things, it was emotional. It was, but a good emotion.
Yeah. No, I understand, or if I read correctly, you also had some capital investment prior to this.
Correct. I when I initially set out doing this, I was just simply taking out Kijiji ads and Facebook Marketplace ads. I would load my trailer up, and every morning I'd have my coffee, and I'd be on the road by 8:39. And those daily ads I was posting with free delivery anywhere in the Calgary area. I had a garage full of coolers, and that was the only way I knew how to market it. So I would just do guerrilla marketing and put up a pop-up tent on a busy street corner,
Okay.
somewhere at a market on the weekend, and just sell them at a fairly equitable price point that that it resonated with consumers.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I got started. It was doing that throughout the summer. And after a couple really successful shipments, I called a friend of mine up, and asked if he'd like to invest, because my lines of credit and credit cards couldn't fulfill potentially this big purchase order that I just received through a large retailer. And so he introduced me to a couple of businessmen here in Alberta that are at the time pseudo retired, and had great business acumen. And these guys, basically, we sat at the donut mill in Red Deer in Gasoline Alley for a few hours, and I pitched them my business plan and projections out 3 years, and what we could do now that we've landed this large retailer. And I was asking for $1 million. And within about 2 weeks, we closed on that. They gave me the working capital needed. And I then went out and set out and hired the few extra people I needed to really take this and scale this.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at now is, we're,
I guess that's the key, right? A lot of people have ideas and want to be entrepreneurs, etc. But man, it'll be tough slogging away if you don't have that investment to give you that boost, right?
yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to, like I said, I have a very close friend that was already attached to this investor, and he knows I grind it out. He knows I'm in the trenches, and I'll do whatever it takes to. If I got to wake up at 4 a.m. to make something work and work 15-hour days, I'll do it. So, his recommendation and referral to this gentleman that he knew, and his partner, I think it just takes a lot of grit. You got to grind it out. Nothing good comes easy.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to put in the time, you will get part-time results. And so, I needed, out of probably a duty of care to my family, I had to make this work, because there were no oil patch jobs knocking on my door. We're talking in COVID, the height of COVID, 2020, things were shut down. And so I either had to make this work and scale it, or I didn't have a livelihood. So that was really out of
Yeah.
necessity. It sure puts a fire under your backside.
What a motivator, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And just like you parlayed your 40 years into Canada's podcast now, and you do what you got to do, and
Yeah.
but you probably, if you were making the millions of dollars through your previous job and they didn't lay you off, you might have just sat back and just, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
you might have just,
yeah, I guess sometimes you don't, until you're pushed, you don't know what you're capable of, right?
and I can say that I was 15 years in the oil and gas sector, and when you're doing well, but it's maybe not something that you love,
Mm.
um, you might become a 9 to 5 and show up and you do the work, and but you're just going through the motions. And I've always, since I was young, I knew this was just that happened, part of my life that I turned into something. I scaled it, but I never thought of starting a outdoor lifestyle brand. It wasn't even, but I always did want to have my own company, start my own company of some sort where I wasn't working for another, and so I was always looking for an opportunity.
Yeah. So, Sean, when you look at the early stages of the business, what do you, and being an entrepreneur, what would you say your biggest challenge was?
Two biggest challenges, I think, understanding we had two things happen in 2021 and 2022. In late 2021, we had a major the Coquihalla, the port of Vancouver, the Coquihalla, the highway. We were completely washed out with the flooding that happened there. And that really put a real wrinkle in our plans of how much actually things cost to ship. Because at
Yeah.
that same, the shipping rates went through the roof, because you also had around that time the Suez Canal. So container ships, when you're importing, exporting, you rely on those shipping channels. And, at one point we were, from a numbers perspective, we were $4,500 USD for a typical 40-foot container to come from overseas into Canada. And it went as high as 25,000 USD for that same container in late 2021 to 2020 and into 2022. So it changes your business model. You're not making the margins anymore, but we weren't about to raise the prices on our customers or our retail partners. So we stuck it out, and eventually things came back down, and the roads were repaired in Canada here from the torrential floods that we had.
Yeah.
And so those are probably two of the biggest challenges to overcome at that point, and they hit us around the same time. And it made us stronger for it, because we then looked at our model and realized, okay, we can still be profitable, still do well, but we just got to get through this, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of planning and looking forward every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you had somebody, say an old friend who's you work together in the oil patch, who's just laid off, and wants to start a business, what advice would you give them?
Coincidentally, I've actually had quite a few people from the oil patch who are still in the oil patch saying, I like what you did. How
Ah,
did you do it? And I really say to them, the products that we've developed now, we're a lower price point, but find something you love. Find a product or a service that you love.
yeah.
If you're working in the oil patch, but you love carpentry, how can you get into carpentry in a way where maybe you're making your own furniture? Maybe locally, you're working with your hands. That's something that you love, um, and figure out how to make just enough to where you're happy. And then if it takes off, then you scale it to where maybe you have other carpenters that want to do the same thing, and you grow from there. But you really got to find something that you love doing each day, because then it's not as much work. There was a famous quote by Wayne Gretzky. Actually, recently I'd watched a podcast where he's always being asked by moms and dads, how much training did you do to get to where you are when you were a kid? Because they're thinking about little Johnny, who's 10 or 11 or 12 or 13, and how much time should he focus? And he says, I never trained. He goes, I just did something that I loved,
Yeah.
and I just played. I just played, and that's what made him good. So it applies to the same thing in the business world. As a business person,
Yeah, most
do
definitely.
something that you love. It won't seem like work. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, as you look forward, Sean, what's the plans for the company and growth wise?
We are excited about, we've got a couple of new patented products that we're going to be launching here. I don't mind saying on your podcast. So this will be the first time publicly I'm announcing it, but we have a patent pending on a new collapsible pet carrier, which is going to be pretty amazing. So look for that in the new year. We're looking to launch that in the late spring. And yeah, it's going to fit right alongside our coolers and our colored drinkware. And I mean, everybody loves their pets, and your pets are part of your lifestyle. You take them camping, you take them hunting, you take them fishing, and so they're going to get something pretty amazing to sleep in at night. And it solves a major problem on the shipping, logistics, and handling when they're collapsible. So our retail partners are going to love it. And their storage managers of where they have to store them and how much they can store. So we've got that coming down the pipe for the new year. We've got some major partnerships we just announced. So we're a national partner with the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association. So working with them, and they're 1,100 members across the country. They're athlete members. And we're going to do some big things in rodeo. So the Western lifestyle and rodeo, we see a synergy between how we are. It's a very authentic, true to yourself industry. They got grit, they grind it out, they're hard workers, and that's what we see our team here at Kailani as. And so happy to be part of the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association, and also branching into golf. So great things happening in the golf world, and we're going to launch. We've got some new products coming down the pipe. We're more national, or we're a provincial partner with PGA Alberta.
Okay.
And so getting into the golf space, where we're looking at expanding into the US, and hopefully we'll be attending a show in about a year with the PGA of America down in Orlando and launching our product line down there.
Interesting. So when you look at,
to grow our brand.
When you look at the business of being an entrepreneur, the time involved and the energy, et cetera, how do you find time to do what you want to do and just relax?
It's I'm putting in 10, 12-hour days most days. No longer than most, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And we've all got, a lot of us have children, so you're shuttling them. I feel like an Uber driver after 6 p.m. and I'm going to turn into an Uber driver, but I don't get paid. So yeah, we try to I spend weekends with family, and obviously late weeknights. But not a lot of time for extracurricular activities. I have only golfed 4 rounds last year. I'd like to go more, but we gotta work to get that free time down the road.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anything else you wanted to mention, Sean?
Just thank everybody that's been a part of our journey to get here, whether it's our retail partners, distributors, promotional companies that we're working with currently and in the future. It's been great to work with you. And then, yeah, just, happy to be delivering a Canadian brand to consumers at a price point that's palatable, especially with these tough times.
Yeah.
A lot of people watch their pennies, and we're going to try to help assist with that, where you can still get great things at an affordable price point. So thanks again, Mario, for having me and the questions, and maybe we'll run into you on the street in Calgary here.
Oh, I'm sure we will at some point. Thanks very much, Sean. That was Sean Alexander, who is the president and founder of Kailani. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast, today with Calgary's podcast. Thanks for joining us.